Hi there to our early birds. Just wanted to let you guys know you're in the right place. We're expecting close to 15 or 20 people, so I'll probably keep us on mute until we're ready to start. But just wanted to let you guys know you're in the right place. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. I've got one person waiting. Give me one moment. Okay. So it's 12:30 on the dot. And what I thought we could do is if you would take this time to double check if you were able to access the agenda and materials on the Google folder. There's 5 materials that we're going to use today. And we'll just give everyone 2 or 3 minutes for anyone still joining us. But in those 2 or 3 minutes, if you could double check that you can access those materials since we'll be using them. And then I'll check back in a few. Thanks.
I don't have any electronic copies of the stuff. So I just learned that was not here.
All right, well, I think we're ready to get started. Thank you all for joining us for our first ever virtual conference. We're so excited to be doing this, and this is our test run on it. So we are certainly open to all the feedback. I'll go through our agenda for the day, make sure that everyone has access to our materials, and then we'll get on into it with introductions. So I do have one person that's still waiting for materials. So if you'll excuse me for just one moment to make sure these are shared. If anyone else can drop a line in the chat box if you're having trouble accessing anything, and we'll be monitoring that. And then just one reminder, since there's a lot of us on here, if you can mute your mic until we go around for introductions. And I've got another one, Hun V. Oh, Vanessa, NKU. Can you, Vanessa, I have your email. All right, I'll send those to make sure people have email materials. Okay, so I just forwarded those 2 sets of materials. If you guys can give it a minute and then check back and let me know if you received those. So our plan for today is that we'll do introductions since we have people from all over the region and beyond on here. We'll do introductions, have people share their name, institution, and what drew them here today. So why this was important to you, why it's important to your campus. Just spend 1 or 2 minutes per person on those. And then we'll go into logistics. So we'll cover how to host a watch party. And if anybody has any experience in this, we would definitely welcome hearing from you. So we'll do how to host a watch party, as well as just do a quick run through of the day of to make sure that everyone is on the same page and understands what will be going on. Then we'll go through our discussion guide together. And there are a couple materials associated with that. So the first one, there's a how to host a watch party, which will be the logistics piece. And then the discussion guide has 3 sets of materials. So that'll be the guide, the Spark deck, and the yellow card. Then we'll do facilitator training. So I'm sure many of you have facilitated before, but for those of you that haven't, we're so excited to have you. And we'll have you feeling confident by the time we leave today. And then finally, we'll check out with any plans. So we'd love to hear what each other's plans are going on in their universities. If anybody is still needing ideas, that should be a good time to bounce some ideas off of each other, and any questions that people have going into the event. So anything else, like I said, we'll be monitoring the chat box. That's probably the easiest way to pose questions, but obviously feel free to take your mute off and chime on in too. So I think we'll get started with introductions. We've got 3 people at Kentucky Campus Compact here. So we'll rotate on and off of the screen. But I'll start with an introduction. My name's Tori Vogelsang. I'm the Director of Academic Engagement here at Kentucky Campus Compact. And we're located on NKU's campus, for those of you who aren't familiar. And this was important to me. It's an idea that came up from within our committee that had a lot of energy around it. And I think the more that I have been tuned into it, the more I see the need. I am an adjunct instructor, and I've seen this, at least one of my students experience housing insecurity in the short time that I've been teaching. So it's really important. And Keith, you just joined us. Keith, you can catch up in the comments. Hey there.
I'm on the phone as well. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay, no worries. Keith, we're just going into introductions. So we're going to do the 3 from the compact and then invite people around to share. Okay.
Hi all, I'm Meg Stevenson with Kentucky Campus Compact, Director of Student Success here, and I love this issue because I've been involved in it in the past, and also it's a big university issue. We lose students to this, so we need to be focusing in on it right here. Thanks.
Good afternoon. I'm Gail Hillicky. I'm the Executive Director of Kentucky Campus Compact. And it was important for me to be part of this project for 2 reasons. One, because of the topic. We're really interested in all types of insecurities, whether it's food insecurity or housing insecurity, in thinking about success of our students. And then the second reason I'm excited about this is trying a new platform for conferences and gathering people together. So we're really excited about trying it out. So thank you for participating.
So I've got one introduction in the chat box that I'll share with everyone. And then if you don't mind, I know it can be a little hard to see who's going next, but if you don't mind taking yourself off mute or letting us see your face for a quick introduction. But Tiffany Harmon just introduced herself in the chat. She's the Student Resource Center Liaison with Ohio Campus Compact and Serve Ohio AmeriCorps at Columbus State Community College. And they are hosting a watch party on their campus. So thank you, Tiffany. And Dee Van Horn is next. So Dee Van Horn, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm going on and you still couldn't hear me. I am here because we are hosting, as Tiffany Harmon mentioned. She is our AmeriCorps Student Resource Center liaison. But along with that, this is very, very important to me because as a community college, located close to downtown, we do have students who are homeless, and it's something that we deal with every day here in our office. We connect students to resources and support, and so this is actually very near and dear to my heart. And I'm hoping that maybe I can get some additional information as to ideas and how to support students. Thank you.
Thank you. So anyone can go, or you can volunteer yourself in the chat box.
I will go. Can you hear me okay, Tori? Hi, I'm Vanessa Hunn. I'm the interim school director for the School of Social Work here at Northern Kentucky University. And very interested in this issue. It's a pervasive problem, as we recognize, a pervasive problem across the nation, but locally we have a problem here with homelessness. And then educating social work students, we just want to make sure that we're always educating social work students in this area of homelessness so that they can be effective in their practice.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. We could hear you loud and clear.
Right.
Hi, I'm Nathan Wentz from Xavier University. You can hear me okay?
All good. Hi, Nathan.
All right, good. Hi. I work in the Eigel Center for Community Engaged Learning, and we work with faculty who are interested in doing service learning and immersive learning components in their courses that have to do with issues of social justice. And so we're aiming to invite faculty who are interested in having these discussions with their students, and also student organizations and other centers on campus in general that are interested in issues of housing and security. It's important to Xavier also because of institutional initiatives to be of assistance to our neighbors and the neighborhoods that surround Xavier University in regard to housing and security. And we do that in a very particular way through the Community Building Institute, which Liz Bloom, who will be presenting, one of the presenters for the conference, is the director of. So it's close to the mission of Xavier to be supporting our neighbors where they see needs around housing and stability within the neighborhoods.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks. Mm-hmm.
I can go next if you'd like. I'm Keith Lancer at Mount St. Joseph University, and I'm excited about this conference for two reasons. The first one is my father experienced homelessness for a very long time while I was a teenager, so it's kind of a personal issue and topic for me. But professionally, I have one faculty member presenting at this conference, along with one of my former social work students who just graduated in December. So I'm really excited to hear their stories at the event.
That's awesome. Thank you, Keith.
I'll go next. My name is Grace Reagan. I'm an AmeriCorps Vista Civic Engagement Advisor at the University of Kentucky Center of Service Learning and Civic Engagement. And I'm excited for this because UK is hosting a watch party here on campus through our Center of Community Outreach. We also have a student who will be speaking at the event in Cincinnati, and she is starting a nonprofit focusing on youth homelessness in Lexington. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mark Nykirk at Northern Kentucky University, a Scripps Hart Center for Civic Engagement, and along with Vanessa and other NKU partners, we'll be hosting watch party here and a viewing of the public at the Campbell County Public Library in Newport. It's great to be part of this. We've been active in the Service Learning Network for a number of years, and it's kind of fun to have this experiment with a virtual conference. And this topic is one that we've been focused on at NKU quite a bit for the past 3 or 4 years, I guess, beginning and kind of stimulated with a visit by Matt Desmond and talk about his book Evicted, that we've had a number of dialogues and activities. So this is a continuation of that for us.
Thank you. And Mark was the original idea generator on this. So thank you, Mark.
I can go next.
Great.
My name is Natalie Vickus. I'm the Director of Civic Engagement and Student Leadership at Lindsey Wilson College. We are hosting a watch party and a discussion. I've actually got a student leader who's going to be taking the lead on that, so we're really excited about that. And it's important to me for a lot of reasons. I think it's important for students to be aware of this issue, whether they've experienced it or not, to be able to make positive change in this area. But I also sit on the board for a local nonprofit that's a crisis resource center, and I was part of the initiative last year to fundraise and build a homeless shelter in our community. And so it's something that we've started to see a lot more here, and I'm excited to involve the community in this discussion too, so they can be more aware of it.
Thank you, Natalie.
Hey everybody, this is Jamie Williams from James Madison University in Virginia, and I work in our Community Service Learning Department, and we focus on a lot of our community partnerships and work directly with organizations that address affordable housing and homelessness in a multitude of ways. And so part of the conversation that we're hoping to have after the virtual aspect of this is what JMU as a university's impact is on the affordable housing issue in our local community, as well as then focusing on how our students are also facing this issue. And I co-chair the Basic Needs Insecurity Advisory Board on campus. And so we contextualize it from the student perspective, as well as what the institution's impact could and has been on affordable housing locally.
Thank you, Jamie. We're happy to have you. I've got one other introduction in the chat box, so I'll read that for anybody that's just on the call. And then if there's anyone else, we'll wrap up after this. Hi all, I'm Preston Riley. I work in the Dean of Student Office at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. Housing and basic needs insecurities have been a heavy area of focus for our division this year, as they are increasingly common roadblocks for our students. No mic on this computer, sorry. All good, Preston. Thank you, we're happy to have you. Anyone else out there we haven't heard from yet?
I can go next. Hello, everyone. My name is Allie Doring. I serve as our director for our Student Advocacy and Support Office at the University of Akron. And so we have several support programs in place already and are always looking at options to expand. But our emergency grant program is where we probably interact with the most students who are facing housing and basic needs insecurity in general. So that is largely where our interest comes. We also are sponsoring an AmeriCorps this year. And so our AmeriCorps is helping us put together our virtual hosting opportunity.
Great, thank you so much. And you all are here on short notice, aren't you?
Yes, but thank you for including us.
Thank you. I think we just had one other participant join. VL. We're just doing a quick round of introductions. So if you just joined, we'd love to hear from you. Just your name, institution, and why this is important for you to be here. And VL's computer is not working. Hi, Valerie Luciano. Great, thanks, Allie. Okay, well, I think we've heard from everyone now. And if we haven't, please drop a line in the chat box. So Valerie, who's joining us, is an AmeriCorps National Service member. Thank you, Valerie. We're happy to have you. All right. Well, this is so exciting to have so much representation, from our region and beyond. So let's get right on into it. I know people have tight schedules. So we're going to get started today with the logistics of the event. So I'll start with just the day of logistics and do a run through so that everyone's on the same page about what that's going to look like. And then we're going to move into the how to host a watch party guide. So here's what the day of is going to look like. We have watch parties happening at, it looks like now over 10, probably close to 12, maybe more campuses. We'll get a final head count on this after this pre-conference. But somewhere 10, 12 or a little bit more watch parties happening. And the main event will be taking place at the downtown Cincinnati Public Library, which is where the public is filmed. So we'll be streaming from there. And there won't be much of a crowd there that day other than people who are participating live on the event. So anyone else will be at a separate watch party. And the way that that's going to go is we have a moderator, Steve Oldfield, who does a lot of communications here in the greater Cincinnati area. And Steve has actually interviewed Emilio Estevez on his role in the public. So he'll be kickstarting us with that brief introduction of his interview with Emilio. As a side note, we were in communications with Emilio's representatives, and he was very supportive of our event and said that if he was in town, he spends about half of his time in Cincinnati now. If he was in town, he was going to participate, but he will not be. So we're going to use Steve's interview as an introduction. We have 5 TED speakers, kind of unofficial TED speakers, and they are amazing. We've reviewed proposals. We're recording a couple of them today as backups. And so we have 2 students, 2 faculty, and 1 community partner presenting their talks on how they have either been affected or involved in housing insecurity. Those should be about 15 minutes apiece. So that'll be a combination of at least 1 recorded presentation, live presentations, and possibly someone remoting in from their own watch party to do their presentation. So after transitions between those with Steve, we'll conclude that section with a panel. So any of the speakers that are available live that day, we're going to participate in a little bit of a debriefing discussion with them. And that concludes about the first half of the event. So that's the presentations portion. And the next 2 hours is where we move into local dialogue. So that will be kicked off by our executive director, Gail Hillicky, who you just met. We're going to do some of that training today, but she'll get us started the day of, and then break out into our local discussions where we'll share intermittent prompts for each campus. And these are an invitation. If things are going great at yours and you get off on a tangent, but that the facilitator finds productive, these are just guides. So we're there to support you, but not constrain you. And then we'll conclude that with a checkout led by Gail. So hearing from each of the local dialogues, what the big takeaways were, what struck them. And facilitators will be asked to complete a yellow card that's kind of the biggest or best idea that's come out of this from your group or that you're committing to on an institutional level. So that will help us as the committee debriefs to bring those together and think about what our collective action can be moving forward. Okay, so that's what the day of will look like. And I'm keeping an eye on the chat box for any questions on there. And if not, I'm going to move into how to host the watch party. So I do not know how to do screen share on here. Does anyone know how to do that? For now, why don't you just follow along with the documents that were sent out? So again, this is on the Google folder, and we're starting with number 1, how to host a watch party. So I'm just going to walk through this with you all. should take about less than 10 minutes. So this is kind of a general how to host a watch party guide. And a lot of these we've already determined, but some of our specific information is plugged in there. So we know what we're watching, but in preparation for the event, to think about why we're watching it. So that's kind of the question we started with all together here today. So when is the event? We know that we'll all be gathering together on the afternoon of February 7th.
I don't know how to do this.
Sorry about that.
What's happening?
So we know we'll all be gathered together on that afternoon, but please be thinking about, if you haven't already, when you'll be doing a screening of your event. So there are several options for that, or excuse me, a screening of the movie. That could take place the morning of the event. So I know some people are planning a long day altogether. It could be the night before, it could be any time the week before, whatever works out well for you and your team. Think about who you're inviting to the event and how they can help plan. Make sure that you've designated a space so you have somewhere to host your event. And if you're doing this in conjunction with any club or department, that this would be an opportunity to do a tabling for that as well. So if there's other related information that you want to share with the captive audience, please feel free to piggyback off of this event by including tabling or something else like that. Okay, so how will you watch the movie? So please make sure that you have access to and do a pre-screening of the movie. So originally we were going to do this all together as one long day, and we found that that was going to be hard for people to commit to. So we've introduced this option of flexibility where you can choose when you'd like to do a preview of the movie. And the best options that we've found are either renting the public through your local library. I know in the greater Cincinnati area, the downtown branch of the library has over 40 copies available. Originally, we thought it was on Netflix, and so anybody that was leaning toward that option, it does not appear to be available on Netflix at this time, but it is available online through Amazon. So if you have access to Prime, it's pretty reasonable to rent, just I think 99 cents if you're on Prime, and if you're not, it's about $4. There's also options to purchase the movie. Just a heads up, if you do rentals on Amazon, it expires within 24 hours once you start the movie. So make sure you're thinking about when you'll do a pre-screening and then advertising that appropriately. Make sure that you have a good internet connection and then all the appropriate AV equipment, projectors, screens, speakers. And think about how you're inviting people to relax and enjoy the event. So one option is just to invite everyone to Brown Bag, to bring their own lunch. You may be able to offer light refreshments, coffee, sodas, some snacks, or if your budget allows, a full lunch would be, I'm sure, appreciated as well. And again, make sure that you're inviting other people to pitch in so that this isn't all on just the host or facilitator. So I'm on step 2 now, getting the word out, sending out the invitations. We have a few event invitations available for you to share with your groups, and I know a lot of campuses have done their own individual invitations. We would love to pool that information afterwards, so we'll include that as a question on our evaluation survey of how many participants you had. But for our general event, there is a Facebook event with the link and information there. We're sending emails through Constant Contact, which you're welcome to forward to your group or to your department campus. Our invitation tracker is Eventbrite. Think about reaching outside of the people that you might always go to. So we we welcome invitations to faculty, staff, students, community partners, national service members. If there's anyone else that we're not thinking of, we'd love to hear ideas over in the chat box. We are going to be on social media, so we'll be on Twitter using the hashtag HackingHousing2020. So think about using your social media, newsletters, those kinds of things. And the day of, to be doing some kind of sign-in sheet. So collecting names and contact information, probably for your follow-up purposes, but also for the event that we can get a total head count. And don't forget about reminders. So best practice suggests a reminder 1 week out and another the day before. Okay, getting your materials together. If you are doing something tabling, make sure you have enough things to hand out. We would invite you to ask everyone to bring something to take notes with or to provide that. So if you have some extra notebooks or even just scrap paper, that's going to be a key component of our discussion, to invite people to be taking notes on ideas and questions as they're either watching the movie, the TED Talks, and then going into the discussion. So a couple good ideas when you're hosting any event: showing up a little bit early, making sure things are set up, has everything the way you're hoping for it to be, and then remembering to do a tech check. So double checking your Wi-Fi connection, speakers are on, and it's always good to think about a backup. So the day of, make sure you have greeters, whether that's you, students, anyone else, to make people feel welcome there. Again, we'll want to do a sign-on sheet there. Designate someone to take photos. You could even also designate someone to be your social media person. We would love to see and share those photos there. I know there's a lot of excitement around this as a new model for hosting an event. So we would love to document it at all of our different locations. And don't forget to relax and enjoy it. As for follow-up, make sure after the event, you're thanking everyone for their participation. And remember, you've got a captive audience here. So if there's other things that are going on related or that you're involved in that you'd like to share, use that time. Some people may have a lot of energy leaving the dialogue. So if you do have time to stay and continue talking with a few people, there's usually some people that want to stay and keep talking after a dialogue like this. And finally, after you've done all your socializing, one of the things we're asking facilitators to take ownership of is completing this yellow card that we'll talk about. And again, this is your best idea or next action step for your institution. If you can complete that, scan it and send it back to the event committee. Again, that will allow us to determine next steps and collective action. And the next day, make sure you're sending a thank you message. Again, we'll send something out that you're welcome to forward out to your participants, but we'll do a thank you as well as an evaluation, since this is a new model for us, and we definitely want feedback on how this is going. So you're very welcome to send that out to all of your participants and use the same thing that we are using. Okay, and a special shout out, thank you to the American Association of University Women for giving us something to base this off of. Okay, I'm going to take a look over in the chat box while we transition over to Meg. So if you have any questions about logistics, now's a good time for that. And then we'll be moving into the discussion component. So Keith shared that he bought it online on Amazon for about $10. And Mark Nykirk shared that he's doing a movie viewing in Greater Cincinnati and can use reserved a room at the Campbell County Public Library. And it's a free viewing of the public, open to all, not just NKU participants. So if you're in the Greater Cincinnati area and you'd like to piggyback off that, that sounds like an invitation from Mark. So thank you so much.
Is there a date on that?
Let's see, January 29th at 6 p.m.
For the live TED style talks at the library, any specific directions for the presenters about where to go, where to be, what time, like?
Good question. Our logistics person is not here today.
Okay.
Let me get the information and I can send it out to everyone.
Okay, but that'll be coming up, so, all right.
Thank
Okay, very good. Yeah.
Yes, so Mark is doing the screening of the public on January 29th at 6 p.m. And that's over in the chat box if you want to check that out. Okay. We'll keep monitoring chat box, and I'm going to turn it over to Meg to talk about the discussion guide.
Okay, so we're on to discussion guide. So luckily, this isn't new information. It's just formatted a little bit differently for the day of, so it will be cleaner, I think. So there's 3 documents. First one you want to look up. Oh, I just pulled it, that's why. Yeah, you can. So we're going to be looking at the discussion guide. That's the first one. It's sort of just a how-to. So again, I want to reinforce that this is just a guide. So if you veer off this for some really rich discussion, pertinent questions, action plans, things like that, that's fine. But we wanted to do this just for some consistency within the groups and simplicity. Also, you know, if you haven't done this before, it's just, I think it will flow really well, and it should get us to where we need to be for the yellow card. So it's just a guide. And again, this is reiterating, we want to provide each participant with paper and pens to summarize their thoughts and ideas as they come up. And then for the actual discussions after the TED Talks, you want to follow this. There's 3 slide questions in the Spark Deck document. So it's a PowerPoint. It's called the Spark Deck, and it's going to summarize questions in grouping. So we have, the first one will be your reactions, initial reactions, and then the content arena, and then actions. So the questions in each of those arenas will be focused on specific reactions or ideas that we want to capture. And those will each last for about 20 minutes. Also on the discussion guide, if you need other questions, I've included just a bunch of optional questions that you can use as filler, or if the discussion gets slow or kind of sluggish, there's just an abundance of questions that you could use just in case you need them. And then the last document that I wanted to talk about on this, on the shared drive, is the yellow card. So the yellow card is sort of a content card that will, in effect, cull everything that you've been doing in your group so that you can set down the ideas, maybe ideas or idea with the most potential that could turn into an action plan. And these are the things that, the cards that we're going to want that you will scan to us. So really it's just summarizing the really rich stuff that comes out of each group so that we can have an idea about what the action plans are, and so that you can have an idea about what your action plans are as well. So that's basically it. This just went through, this is just the outline to the discussion, and then those 2 slides will help guide and facilitate the discussion, we hope. So if there's any questions on this, go ahead and send them through chat. Yeah, oh, that's a good point. So Tori just reminded me that when we're going through the slide questions, we can share that. We can post those. So again, choose to use them or not, but they will be shown to everyone. Okay, I don't think there's any others. So I think we're gonna move forward with facilitation, and here's Gail.
Thanks, Meg. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you all here.
Would you like to see everyone?
Oh, I would love to see everyone. That would be great. I can see
yeah,
Nathan.
you're good. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just
scrolled to the top. I thought it might still be on the
got it.
video.
Okay, great. So I in the Google section, there is a document called facilitation, and I am just going to go over some general facilitation ideas Those of you who facilitate a lot, I'm hoping that you will add things in the group chat. This is kind of an overview just to get us centered about facilitating a conversation. So as you look at the document, I first put in that the purpose of facilitating is really to provide that space for people to have a productive conversation. So you're really the holder of the container to help process that. And then when I think about facilitating, I think about really 4 steps or 4 things to prepare as a facilitator. And the first one is to prepare yourself, then prepare the participants, do the facilitation, and then reflect. It just helps me to kind of keep that framework, whatever kind of activity I'm doing. So the first part, preparing yourself. So you really are the most important element in the conversation when you're thinking about providing the space for the conversation, because your presence and your instruction can really help structure the event. So the 4 things that I think are really important that I've found is to really know the topic. You don't have to be an expert on it, but read about these documents that this group has prepared. Just know kind of your own experience, kind of think about your own experience about the topic. The second is to know the schedule. So, just read over it a few times so that you feel comfortable, you know what's going to happen, so you don't have to keep referring back or kind of figuring it out as you go along. So know the schedule. Know your role. So you might have other people helping you, or you might be the one that's facilitating. So know what your part is in it. And then we're going to talk some more later in this document about the role of a facilitator in general. And then to know yourself. So, are there any hot buttons that are going to come up for you in this topic or hesitancies or cautions, just for you to notice so that you don't block anybody's discussion, so that you can watch yourself and just be cautious around those kind of topics. So that's about preparing yourself. And I think, like Tori said too, just be ready to enjoy the day and to really ease into it as you're participating. The second step is to prepare the participants. And so we all know that participants come with just a diverse background, both in having conversations and on this topic. And we don't want anybody to feel like they can't be part of it. So if they're not a seasoned conversationalist or they don't know anything about housing and security, they still are welcomed, and we want to hear their voice. We want everybody to feel like they belong. So the first part is thinking about the purpose of the event. And so you probably will want to say some things about the purpose of the event, both on your campus and then at the larger level. But for any conversation, there is always a purpose to make connections, build trust, and build social capital. I know this group especially knows the benefit of building social capital in, longevity of people's mental health, of people's social health. And so it's really important to focus on that. And then in this particular, so that's for any conversation you're having, but for this particular event, what comes to my mind about the purpose is to learn about housing insecurity, to share ideas, and then to decide on actions on what people might do. And, even small actions, if everybody goes away with one action that they're going to do, that is a huge win for this project, that there's a lot of movement happening in the world. So that was the framework of what the purpose of the event was. And then describe the schedule. Most people are curious about what the schedule is and what they can be expecting. So either say it out loud or have it posted or have a handout, something so that those who care about those kind of things can have access to it. Then for those of you who want to provide a framework about conversations. So on page 3 of the handout, there is a little table that describes the different types of conversations, debate, dialogue, and deliberation. And so you might even just want to mention that there's different types of conversations, and that today we're really going to focus on dialogue and deliberation. We want to hear people's ideas, and we want to ask questions so that we can understand different perspectives. And then we also want to deliberate. We want to think about what are the options for us to make an impact on this work. So as Meg and Tori have already said, each of you will facilitate a little differently, and you should. I remember one time I was filling in for someone doing a facilitation, and she had prepared it all, and that, down to the script and everything, and she just asked me if I could fill in for her. And so I did, but I was not part of the creating of it, and I didn't really understand some of the things that she was doing. And so when people were asking me questions, I couldn't really answer. And so that just, was my experience of saying, okay, I need to do it my own way that makes sense to me and that's going to make sense in this situation. So that's for you too. So you can, think about how you're going to introduce this to your group and the things that you're going to say that make sense to you. But I'm just giving some overarching ideas that may or may not help you. I know that others in this group will have some other ideas as well. So just kind of that framework of conversations, of helping people get in the mindset of what they're here to do, to have that dialogue and to deliberate about some options. And then the last thing in this section is to enlist participants to help create a safe space for conversation. And usually when I talk about this with people, I actually just say that, we're all here together, and together we can help create a safe space. And I'm inviting you to be part of that. And usually that is, has something to do with ground rules or group agreements or that kind of thing. And on page 4 of this handout, I've listed some of them that I use. Typically in a setting where you're having conversations, it's a great idea to ask people to create their own group agreements, but it is a very common thing to do, and sometimes there's not time for the group to create those. And so because it's common, there's some ones that usually show up on the list. And so I've found that groups are fine if you put some up and then ask if there's any others, or if they have any questions, or if they want to, if there are any that they don't feel like they can live up to, then that group has some input to it. But just creating that safe space is an important thing, and especially not judging and not trying to fix other people or trying to correct them or give them advice, I think is an important piece of a healthy conversation. So that is the part of getting the participants ready to talk. And then the third step is to facilitate. And from your introductions, my expectation or my assumption is that all of you have facilitated. So you could all do this section here. But we do want participants to participate. I see that I missed a section on my paper here. I'll correct that in the Google Drive. But there's really, as a facilitator, there's two seemingly, the words sound like they're divergent, for you to be neutral and for you to be directive. And so as a facilitator, being neutral means that people don't feel like they are looking to you as the authority figure and trying to find out what you think and what your opinion is, but they have the freedom to have their own opinion, their own conversation. So for you to kind of stay out of the conversation in some ways, to give them that opportunity to do that. If you're a person who really has a hard time and you love this topic and you really want to be involved in it, if you can first try to ask questions of the participants, if they're trying to find out what your opinions are, ask them questions, turn it around on them to try to get them to think deeper about their own ideas and their own thoughts about it. If you still can't resist, then really make it apparent or explicit that you're taking off your facilitator hat and you are participating, adding some comments to the conversation. And then when that's done, let them know that you're a facilitator again, just so that it's not confusing that they are looking to you for answers or expectations, that kind of thing. I also think it's important to honor all ideas, and sometimes the way I do it sometimes, and I've seen other people, is to thank people for their contribution. I've had this experience, maybe you have too, of having a conversation and the facilitator says, "Oh, Nathan, that was a fantastic idea. I just love that. We're going to write that down." And then Mark makes a comment and we don't say anything. And so Mark's sitting there thinking, well, I guess my comment wasn't very good. It wasn't very helpful to this group. So if everybody can be thanked, or just an acknowledgement or something like that, so that everybody feels safe and not evaluated by their idea. So those are all the ideas around being neutral. And then there's a bunch of ideas about being directive. And so being a facilitator is such an honor because it really creates a space for people to have great conversations. But the facilitator really needs to own the fact that you're in charge and that it is important for you to take charge. So it's really good to not to ask for permission. You've thought this through. You have plans for how you're going to do this, and you're going to present and lead. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be open to feedback. If it's not going well or people have an idea, somebody offers an idea, certainly you can adjust and shift. In fact, that's a good thing to do. But go in knowing your game plan and be open to the shift if it happens. Give one direction at a time. I know we've all done it, and we've all been in places where people give you 2 or 3 or 4 things to think about at once, and then you break into your small group and you say to each other, what are we supposed to do? I don't remember what we're supposed to be doing here. So just be clear and give one direction at a time. Questions from participants about instructions. If there's time, you can engage in that, but if there's not, just ask them to, do their best. Best way to try this is just to get involved, and then if you still have questions, let me know, and just act like you understand the instructions. The next one is to be ruthless about the schedule. So this is a challenge for beginning facilitators, but probably not you all. You've been through this, but people appreciate a facilitator who keeps things on time, and they appreciate being able to move off of a conversation that's gone too long or those kind of things. So really watch the time and move people along or move the groups along. Alternate between small group and large groups. So this, the small group of 3 or 4 people is really where every voice gets to be heard and expressed and listened to. And so, some of you may only have a small group, or some of you may have 10 or more people, and you want to divide those into, 2 or 3 groups so that everybody has a chance to really explore the topics and really be heard in those small groups. But you also don't want to just leave it into small groups because you want to connect everybody back to the whole group. So you want to kind of go back and forth between the two. A typical way to go back and forth is to have small groups report out. And sometimes, especially when there's a time limitation, having a full report out is kind of draining and just eats up the time. And so short report outs are good, asking a group for their best idea, or do popcorn, where people just call out ideas and they get registered. If no report out is needed, you still need to hear from the whole group. And so maybe you ask 4 or 5 people to respond to the question, what struck you about the conversation you just had? So this way they get to talk about what happened to them and not really the content, but they still get to express their experience, and then the whole group gets to come together again. I guess I should have stopped at each step to see if somebody had a thought about each step, but since I'm almost done, I'll finish, and then I'd love to hear if any of you have additional ideas on any of these steps. The 4th step is to reflect, and often we do that in a group by doing a checkout, which is a good way to have everybody have their voice in the room, maybe with a question or a comment about what they are taking away with them, something like that. It's really good to honor all learning styles and personality styles. So you might want to give folks time to think or to write down some of their ideas before then people start talking verbally, to share things with the group. Another way to check out or reflect is to ask people to make a commitment to one action, something that they can do in the next 30 days to move this effort forward. And then definitely at the end of everything, you want to, even if you do things in small groups or you have people write things, you want to hear at least 4 or 5 voices from the large group, so that the group is connected toward the end or at the end. Okay, so that's my framework when I do facilitation and kind of what I think about. I'm curious if anybody has any other tips or ideas that they use that are really helpful when they're facilitating. So I'll give you a minute to think about that and type it in if you have some ideas. Can I tell if somebody's typing, like it goes?
I think it does.
Okay, because nobody's typing. Okay. While you're thinking, I also want to point out that on page 4 of the handout, there's some prompts that you could share with your participants. When you're in a dialogue with folks and you're listening to somebody, the best way to get them to talk more or to think more about what they're saying is to say, tell me more, or why is that important to you? So if we can learn not to lead people in our questioning or our prompts, then they can really think deeply about what is it that they really believe or they really think. So rather than saying, well, don't you think about the homeless folks, weren't they doing this or that? That's a directed question. So rather than that, really ask a generic question about why was it that important to you? Why did you, what was that? What moved you to talk about that part? And then if a group is having trouble, if there's a lot of dissent, I don't expect it with this topic because I think the people that are coming to this topic are kind of passionate. But if there is dissent, or maybe just as a good practice, when one person talks, then the next person who talks affirm that first person. Yes, that was a great idea. And then they say their idea, even if it's totally different from that first idea. But the yes and kind of builds an idea that we're all in this together and talking as a group, even if our ideas are different, we're still connected as people with an interest in this topic. And then for deliberation, some of the prompts, what can we accomplish together that we can't on our own? So is there some way to do things as a group that an individual can't? What is the action that inspires me? And what are the trade-offs? Like if we decide to, this is an action, are there any consequences to that? Are there any trade-offs that we have to think about? So those might be some prompts if people are stuck on conversations, or might even just encourage conversation. We have a couple thoughts Natalie shared with us, that she prefers to avoid why questions when facilitating, because it can imply judgment or that participants have to justify their thoughts. Instead, she usually uses help me understand. So that's a great idea. So the why sometimes implying a judgment, like, why did you do that? Thank you. And then Keith also mentioned that on page 5, I've also included some handling facilitator challenges. And, at the beginning I said everybody has, all the participants will have different experiences and different skills with conversations. And so sometimes there are people who make it more difficult to have conversations, or maybe interrupt the conversation or the flow of things. And so I've added some ideas, if there's folks who dominate the discussion, then there's some questions that you can raise or help the small groups to raise. These might even be some prompts that that you can share with your folks. What ideas haven't been expressed? Could someone tell us a story to illustrate that point that Nathan just made? Yeah, so there's just some prompts there that for people who dominate the discussion. And then dealing with a difficult participant, I did some training with the Kettering Foundation on the National Issues Forum, and we had a great teacher who would really do this, escalating the response to somebody who was difficult and who wasn't listening. And even, she would go and stand right in front of the person and or put their hand on his shoulder or something like that to redirect the conversation. And then handling misinformation. So really, if somebody says something that there's evidence to show otherwise, to try to find a way to talk about that so everybody doesn't leave with misinformation. So talking about where a resource where it says something different, or asking if there's different perspectives or those kind of things, so that we really want to try to be sensitive to people and to their ideas, but we also don't want to promote misinformation and ideas that have some fact and research behind them, but the people haven't caught up with that yet. So hopefully those facilitator challenges might be helpful to some. So this was just a kind of an overview, some things that we use here at the Compact and that we found to be helpful. I think each of you could probably have a document like that, and we'd love for you to share that with us or with each other. Can they put things in the Google? Not.
It's view only, but if they send it to me, I can add it to share.
If there's anything you want to add, some ideas or questions that you use, you can send it to Tori and we can add that to the Google section for you. Any other questions or thoughts or ideas? And I think I will hand it back to Tori. Oh no, is it mine next or is it yours?
We can do check out, or I can either one.
Okay. I forgot that I was still on. So next we're going to do a checkout, and we would like to hear from everybody who is willing. And we'd love to hear just a few minutes. So I think we have time for about 2 or 3 minutes from each person. If you already have an idea about how you're going to structure your day, just so that we get an idea and other people hear ideas in case, maybe some people haven't thought about it yet or finalized it yet. And then if you have any questions that you want to bring up or ask the group or ask us, that would be great too. So if there is somebody who has thought about how they're going to structure their day, who would be willing to start, I would invite you to do so.
Gail, I can talk about what we're doing at Mount St. Joseph.
Thank you, Keith.
So I believe at around 9:30 in the morning, the day of, I'll be putting on a viewing of the film here on campus. And then participants are welcome to come to that or not. I think a lot of them will have already seen the film in some other form. So that'll last until around 11:30, and then we'll have a little break, and I'm planning on just getting pizzas and salad and whatnot for lunch, so people can go to the restroom and grab a pizza and a salad. And then after that portion, then we'll all kind of come together. We'll all watch the TED Talks as a group, and then I'm planning on facilitating the dialogue immediately after that. So that is kind of my game plan for the event.
Thank you, Keith. Are you having just students, or are there other folks involved yet, or do you know?
We currently have probably maybe 20, 25 people signed up. So we have students, faculty, staff, and community partners.
Thank you.
At Xavier, we're screening the film Thursday evening, the day before, on the 6th, in an auditorium, and the conference will be begin at noon the next day on the Friday, and we have a room reserved in the student center, so it'll be kind of more of in a traffic area and visible for folks. And we're inviting, or invitations have been extended and following up on to faculty and staff, some particular constituents of the Center for Community Engaged Learning and the Community Building Institute. And it's also open to the public, at least through the Eventbrite. And partners in neighborhoods around Xavier have also received invitations, and it's been on the Community Building Institute Facebook and so forth. So we hope to get a cross section of people, and hopefully we get a good number of students also present at both of the events. And I will be facilitating the discussion after the virtual presentations.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Who else has a description for their afternoon event?
Do you want to summarize on Katie?
This is Mark Nykirk, and Vanessa can add more. As has been mentioned, we're showing the film for a public viewing at the Newport Public Library on January the 29th, and we've opened it up to the community and advertised it on campus as well. And then the event itself, which Vanessa and her team are hosting with us, is in our Building the Health Innovation Center, and that's also open to campus participants as well as community participants, and it's been shared through a network of community people who've been involved in the housing insecurity issue.
Thank you.
Dr. Kevin Lotz and I will be co-facilitating this, so we're looking forward to co-facilitating, and so he and I will get together and kind of talk about how we do that as a team. We've asked some other faculty to make sure that they also talk with their students in their classes about it, and maybe to even incentivize students by giving extra credit. So we'll be co-facilitating from 2 to 4 p.m. on that day, on February 7th.
Great. Remind me which institution you're at. I forget.
In Northern Kentucky University. I'm with Mark Nykerk.
Great. I hadn't met you before, so it's nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
And I love that idea of co-facilitating. I love to facilitate with somebody else. It's kind of fun.
Grace Reagan with UK. We have already watched the film during our in-hall week last semester, and so we are encouraging students to gather at the Center of Community Outreach in our Student Center. There will be lunch, and then we're just going to join on in to watch the TED Talks and follow the conversations.
Thank you. What was the reaction of people when they saw the film?
They were excited. It was they had a good reflection then, and they had a lot of participants, and especially with our day of service, of course. So I think it'll be good. Hopefully, I will.
Thank you. Anyone else want to describe your day or have questions about what you might want to do?
Gail, this is Mark. Can I ask a kind of a technical question? I wasn't quite sure. When we're doing the dialogue, are we staying connected to the streaming or the Zoom, or I understand we're doing that, as we watch from noon to 2, but it sounded like there were some things where we connect virtually after that also. So what's the virtual connection between 2 and 4?
So at the beginning at 2 o'clock, then I am going to welcome folks to the dialogue and just kind of tell people about, what's happening across the country actually in this. So just very short. And then every 20 minutes or so, we are going to have something on the screen if you need or want to use it. So kind of thinking about when you first start the dialogue, getting people's reactions and their ideas and concerns. So that would be the first 20 minutes. So we would have some prompts on the screen, and then after that 20 minutes, then we would come back with maybe some content questions. So we will have that for anybody that wants to use it, and as a way of kind of keeping in touch. And then we'll have at the end, we'll have a kind of a summary connecting with everyone. So I haven't asked Tori about this, but I suppose if you don't want to use that, they can just turn it off or something, or turn down the volume or something, or we wouldn't want them to turn it off, but
Yeah, if you didn't want to use that and you had another method in mind, that you could either kind of block your screen for a while, but we'd love to have you for the checkout session at the end. And we would especially love your yellow card to collect that, to kind of gather your best ideas or next steps for your institution.
Did that answer your question, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. So, as Tori said, this is the first time we've done this, and we definitely want your feedback on this virtual conference because it's kind of exciting for us. We're thrilled and kind of love the grassroots nature of it, that you can invite anybody in your community to participate in this. And so we love that. And we want to get feedback. So if this is a good methodology, then, we want to learn and maybe do it again. And so, our thought in the afternoon is that we want to give you whatever flexibility you need, but we also don't want to lose touch with you. And so we want to be sure that, the whole group across all the campuses get to connect at the end. But we want to give you flexibility so that if you want to, use that hour and a half, that, time, that conversation time in a little bit different way, then you have the freedom to do that. So we're learning, and as we do this first time, which direction is best to go. But that was kind of our balancing act. Do you have more you want to say? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to Tori, and thanks so much, and look forward to seeing you on the 7th.
Great, thank you, everyone. So one question that we have that's come up since we're new to this is how we might facilitate breakout rooms over Zoom. So we are expecting that there may be some individuals tuning in or that are remote from their campus location. And so does anyone have any experience creating Zoom breakout rooms where we could pair people off together?
So this is just in case there are just individuals that don't have a dialogue partner that we could connect people. Is that what you mean? Okay. I don't have experience doing it, but I probably figure it out.
Or if we could bring them into the room, the main room. In case
Right. Yeah.
Bring them back in.
Nathan, I'm going to do a little bit of research too, so maybe we can talk tomorrow over our lunchtime check-in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And for anyone else listening, that's just the committee doing short check-ins leading up to the event. Okay, and committee will talk about a rehearsal date for everybody that's going to be joining, participating live the day of. So we'll talk about a rehearsal date. Before we jump off here, I would just ask everyone if you can scan the invitation list on the Google invite and see if there's anybody else from your institution that had registered separately to make sure that people are working together. There were a couple that I hadn't talked to that looked like they were from the same institution. So if you could just double check that for us. And as a reminder, this is being recorded, so this will be available afterward if you or you have a colleague that would like to check it out before going into the event. The day of, we'll ask everyone to mute their end so that we're only hearing from the live location. Everyone did a great job of that today. Thank you so much for being courteous video conference guests. And let's see. I think that's all today. The last thing I wanted to do is just acknowledge that today is the National Day of Racial Healing, and we know that discrimination does show up in this issue. So thank you all for participating in this effort with us. Okay, well, I'll stay on here for a few minutes. If anybody has questions, wants to chat or leave any chat vocally or leave anything in the chat box. Otherwise, we're all finished up. Thank you all.
Thanks so much for organizing. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you.
Good. Thanks for all the preparations. All right.
And it's time we all come together to create common good for the Commonwealth. Our poverty rates, health and wellness, education, and innovation are in need, and we believe you should give where you live. And while we may seem like a typical community fund, we do things in a very untypical way. The Northern Kentucky Way. We use common resources to help break cycles of poverty. Breaking those cycles